that? Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Plate. As always, I'm your host, Nick Sakales, coming to you live from America, New York. And just like every Monday night, 6 to 7 p.m., we are coming to you live talking all about real estate. And today it's going to be a little bit different from what it's normally been. We're not exactly going to be tackling specific seller issue, buyer issue, landlord issue, which God knows I've had a lot of landlord issues that we've been talking about. And I do appreciate a lot of the people that have been reaching out to me. I really appreciate the fact that you've been sending me your stories, giving me an opportunity to help everybody in the best way I can to share your information to the public, to kind of give both sides of the story. And that's something that's not going to change. That's something that I'm going to continue doing. We're going to take a slight pause from that today as far as the ongoing fight for landlord rights. And believe me, I'm not going to drop the ball on this. I'm going to continue on this. I'm going to use every little bit of power I could possibly muster up in my small WGBB universe in this radio station and my YouTube channel and social media to be able to help give landlords their platform to be able to speak up for themselves and get a fair shake, to be quite honest with you. Because they definitely have not been getting a fair shake, and I want to make sure that every side gets an opportunity to be heard, and we're going to continue doing that. I'm hoping everybody that's watching me from Facebook world, it has audio. Hopefully, we're not having any audio issues, and hopefully, everybody from the YouTube world is getting a clear image. And we're continuing to use the two separate platforms up until we find which one will prevail as far as our ongoing streaming service. For as long as I could possibly keep it going, I will keep the YouTube feeds going, and I will keep the Facebook feeds going. But sooner or later, we're going to have to choose one platform that's better than the other. And we'll give it a few more weeks before we decide what that platform is. Now, the date today is November 2nd, 2020. Why is that significant? Tomorrow we have Election Day. And I think it would be very negligent from my end, and it would be inappropriate from my end to not at least discuss some of the factors from our upcoming elections and future issues or resolutions that we might find from one side or the other winning. And that's why I'm going to dive into a little bit of each candidate's specific agenda, every candidate's specific thought process as far as it concerns our economy, it concerns taxes, it concerns real estate. Now, I'm not going to make this a super political thing. I steered far from making this show a political show, but I think it should be said what each side stands for and how it will affect real estate. And that's how I'm going to dive into it. Now, I know I'm going to get a ton of hate mail. I'm going to get a ton of people supporting what I have to say. And again, I'm taking an even keel approach. It's up to each individual how they approach it, what they believe is the right solution, where their vote should go. Everybody's individual situation is a little different than my own and other people's, and people care for different things. Now, I'm gonna reach out to the people that care about how these elections will affect their pockets and affect their real estate. So I'm not going to ramble on the way I normally do for the first 10 minutes of the show of just going through different other phases. We're going to just dive right into the topic of the day. Hopefully, I get through it completely. And if I don't, that's okay. If there's stuff that's left over that I find that's really important for me to continue with, I will do another live stream out of studio, and we'll continue the conversation, especially if there's comments and questions that are out there. Speaking of comments and questions, I've been getting overwhelming a response in emails, messaging, private messaging, direct messaging through all the platforms. And I promise you, if I have not gotten back to you, but I will get back to you. It's just been overwhelming over the past few days, especially with landlords sending me their issues going on. Landlords sending me their horror stories. To be quite honest with you, I can't believe how many people are going through these hardships right now. But again, I'm not going to dive into that because I have a lot to go over right now. And since I'm on the landlord tenant situation, let's dive right into each side's policy when it comes to our current eviction moratoriums that we're living with. Now, it's been voiced numerous times by Joe Biden that he believes in rent forgiveness. Now, that's a noble concept as far as giving people that have had a hard time and a hard break opportunity to kind of clear the slate and get started. However, under any speech that I've heard, any written document that was provided by Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, there has not been a solution after a potential forgiveness was done. So my question is, in a perfect world, let's say we do a rent forgiveness for a year, because by the time this is all said and done, it's going to be almost a year, if not over a year, from the beginning of the moratorium till the end. How will they make the landlords whole? You got to give a solution. If you're going to give a blanket statement like doing just straight out rent forgiveness, I believe that you need to also give a solution. So what is the solution? Will the federal government come in and make those landlords whole? Because you can't expect the landlords to be the ones to continue paying the bills, especially those small landlords that could barely afford to keep their properties in the shape that they are in right now. There's plenty of landlords that are out of work, and the only income that they were getting in order to continue to pay their expenses was coming in through that rental property. And apparently there's no income coming in. So how are we going to fix that? It's a domino effect. It's a situation where you see a ripple. There's an action, therefore there are reactions. And all I'm hearing is that initial action, but I'm not hearing of how to address all the reactions that will take place after that first action. So I'm going to make that very clear about the forgiveness. Now let's go on the other side of the matter with Donald Trump. He has not said anything as far as rent forgiveness is concerned. He also has not come up with any solutions as far as making any landlords whole. However, everybody knows about the 120-day moratorium that was initially put in place with HUD. That was back in March when we first started this eviction moratorium. Then the CDC recently had jumped in and declared it'd be extended to the end of the year in order to make sure that we stay safe and as clear as possible from our COVID situation of inflating it again. Okay, understood. Now, under the guidelines that CDC had put out there was a declaration that the people that are affected by COVID were the ones that this moratorium are really protecting. Not everybody else. It doesn't say under that guideline and under that law that evictions halt. And in many states, they did halt, including our own here in New York. Now, there's other states that continue to go forward with evictions that were either started previously to the moratorium or are for unrelated issues that are COVID. But apparently here in New York, that's not going to apply until well into January. And I guarantee you January, February, March, we're going to be looking at the ripple effects. Now, why am I making a point of saying this? It doesn't go only under the Fed when it comes to laws and issues like this. It comes down to the local politicians. We're basically in a situation where you have, I just realized I'm getting my head halfway chopped off in Facebook. Maybe that will help everybody a little better. It's hard to be able to do multiple cameras at the same time, but I'm trying to figure it out. I will eventually get there. But it's not only on a federal level that we have to take a good eye, take really notice of and pay attention to what the politicians are saying. It's on the local end too, because usually whatever agenda the regime on top has, let's say it's Republican, the Republicans in the local and state levels usually follow the same kind of protocol. And when it's Democrat, you usually see the same thing. So if you had a Democratic winner, Biden, you'd see the Democratic states kind of working together with them and seeing like using the same kind of policies. If you had a Republican type of leadership, if Trump wins again, you're going to have the states, the Republican states, following the same suit. But you're always going to have that combative kind of interest on a state level, because we're living that right now here in New York. What you have right now is a situation where it's almost like the politicians are drawing putting their foot into the sand and holding themselves put until the elections are over. And I hope that's all it is, and it's not going to continue to drag out, because there's been a lot of dirty politics happening right now on a local level. Again, there's not a lot of major politicians here in New York running up for election, but I would be mindful as far as who is actually running, like if it's local Congress, state senators, assembly. Look down the line and look what they stand for. If they're on the same side of what you believe, I think you should vote towards that end. But that's up to your discretion. Like, in other words, if you believe in what Trump is going forward, you really should be going for locals in the same party. And if you believe in what Biden is going for, you should be going for locals that are in there. So if you're blue, stay blue. If you're red, stay red. That's the best policy, because that's what you believe in. You should follow through with it all the way to the lowest possible electoral officials. Now, that being said, let me just go back. This is what happens. I get into these tangents and I start to go a little bit all over the place when I'm thinking about this thing, especially when it comes to the elections right now, because this thing has gotten me really crazy. Not because of the fact that, we have two opposing sides. We're always having two opposing sides. It's how animate and how vicious it's gotten on both sides, and the fact that one side, in order for the other one to win. I've never seen something so vicious. I've never seen such malice coming from both sides and both parties towards each other. I've never seen a situation where if you don't agree with somebody, then you're the enemy. I've always believed that, right, we don't agree, we don't agree. We don't have to agree. That's one of the greatest things that this country offered us. But it doesn't seem that way right now with all this political tension that's happening, the social tension that we're dealing with. So let's go on to the next thing. I don't believe that either side has a true solution to how they're going to end up making everybody good with the eviction moratorium, and that's both tenants and landlords. More than likely, from what it looks like, the landlords will probably be getting the shorter end of the stick. And that's usually the case. For some reason, everybody wants to keep the landlords vilified and make them into the demons and the bad guys. And usually that's the case. Now, the question is, which side is going to make the landlords hurt less? And from what it looks like right now from the policies, there's nothing coming from the Trump side. Pence has been quiet about this whole topic altogether, so it kind of gives me the interpretation and an understanding that he's following the same guidelines that Trump is. But from what it looks like, Trump's policy is a little bit more favorable towards being able to possibly making landlords somewhat whole down the line. I guarantee you he's not going to make, or that party's not going to make the landlords completely whole, but somewhat whole. From what it looks like from Biden's talks right now, it looks as if the rent forgiveness is something that they're going to push forward for. Somebody's going to pay the bill, and more than likely it's going to look like it's going to be the landlords paying the majority of the bill. So I feel that from that end, it's going to be a little bit more painful. Then Kamala Harris had also spoken about no evictions for a year after the moratorium is over, and then giving tenants 18 months to be able to catch up with their payments that are in arrears. So that's a little bit unclear. First of all, when does that 1 year thought process that she had start? Will it start immediately as soon as the moratorium is over? And then are the 18 months retroactive eviction of non-eviction status? Or is that on top of the year of non-eviction status? Because if it's on top of the non-eviction status, then you're talking about a total of 30 months, which is pretty significant, 2.5 years. So potentially you might have a situation where you have 30 whole months of non-payments where landlords are being obligated at this point to continue to pay their taxes, to continue to pay maintenance, to continue to pay utilities, to continue to pay for any item that's necessary in order to sustain that household or building or apartment complex without any income coming in. And that's a major issue. That's a very big issue, and that needs to be addressed. So if you're I'm not going to sway anybody one way or another, but all I'm going to say is this: if you're a landlord that is hurting right now, as far as not getting payments due to the eviction moratorium and having a lot of tenants causing a lot of problems, I think the picture is pretty clear for you as far as which way to go. I think it's. I don't think it could be any more crystal clear. Again, everybody's that's listening to me. At least I ever hope everybody that's listening to me right now are adults and they can make their own decisions. For me, it's pretty apparent. We don't want to have a situation where you're having tons of people in arrears. So I'm gonna go really quickly into some of the tax cuts that were put in place under the 2017 tax law that Trump had passed. And one of the biggest things was the initial tax cut of the corporate taxes, which were brought down to 21%. Now, it's been clear from Trump in many occasions, as far as public speaking, that his intentions are to reduce those even more. How much more, it's not very clear. But at the very least, from what it looks like, he's not looking to increase them. Now, Joe Biden, as recent as the second presidential debate, animately said that he will be increasing them to 28%, which is a full 7% above where they currently are. Now, where is that going to bring us as far as taxes? The great thing to turn around and say is that we're going to pass it all on to the corporations, let them pay the corporation pay the taxes and that kind of a thing. And that typically doesn't work well. The higher the tax rate that the corporations have to pay, the more they pass along to the end user, which is the consumer in many cases. Sometimes they pass it on to the employees in one way or the other. And other times they decide to reevaluate their work model, sometimes by moving state to state, because it does make a big difference what state that you're operating out of, or sometimes in or out of the country. Now, I'm not clear as far as how much of an effect this will have on real estate directly. However, I am clear that it will affect larger real estate holding companies, and it will affect management companies that are on a large scale that operate out of states that have higher tax rates. That I'm pretty confident it's going to happen. And you're probably going to have a situation where you're going to have a little bit of shuffling around the way for companies to be evolving and trying to work the system in the best way they can. And don't get me, and here's the thing, everybody has a way of looking at the system being bad or good or whatever the case is. The system is the system. It's up to the people to speak up if they're happy with it or not, and they need to apply pressure to their officials on a local level and on a federal level to help their cause. If you're not happy with the system, you need to go out and vote for people that you feel will be doing something that will benefit you more than what the system currently affords. So make sure that you understand what we're dealing with. You want to talk about loopholes like 1031 exchanges? I don't think that's a loophole. I think that's actually a great situation for people to be able to build wealth and live the American dream here in the United States. It's one of these tax benefits that allow people to be able to grow and accelerate their speed as far as how quickly they could get from point A to point B. And I'll give you a perfect scenario. Why am I bringing it to 1031 exchanges right now? Because that's another topic that Biden has clearly said that he wants to get rid of. And the other side hasn't really talked about it much, but I could almost guarantee you, based on previous policies and intentions, I don't feel that they're going to want to touch the 1031 exchanges in the same fashion that the Biden regime does. Okay, so here's the benefit, and I was going to say it in a very small summary of how the 1031 exchanges work. Basically, you buy a property today. You buy at $500,000. That property has a base of $500,000 today. Let's say in 5 years from now, you decide to sell it. So you take that property that you sold, and you could do one of two things. So you do a couple things, but let's make it down to the basic. One, you sell it, and you pay the capital gains tax, is whatever existing is today, or that day, or you do a 1031 exchange where you buy another like property and use all the income that you receive from the sale of the original to purchase that like property and not have to pay tax that day. You basically defer the tax and kick it down the road. How are you kicking it down the road? Well, it was done in a way to be able to allow people to accelerate their growth as entrepreneurs, as landlords, as property owners, and be able to give everybody opportunity to make a step up in property. So you went from that $500,000 property, you sold it, I don't know, $700,000 5 years from now, whatever the case is, 10 years from now, and you bought another property, let's say for $1 million, but you took all the funds that you took out of that original property and you just increased your assets by doing so. It's a great way for an individual to get themselves started, especially if they're working simultaneously and they're growing their equity and their assets all in the same time period. It's not just a tool that's used for the wealthy. A lot of people like to imply that it's only a tool used for the wealthy. It's not. You actually see this happening on the most basic of investment levels. And the truth be said, it benefits the person that's just starting out today much more than it benefits the person that has already acquired and built their wealth. You can see I'm crazy for saying that. I'm not crazy because I know exactly what I'm talking about. If I had the opportunity to be able to purchase a property today for, let's say, $500,000, like I said, with minimal that I had in my pocket, I took that place, I made it appreciate, I brought value to the place, I brought it up to $800,000, and down the line, a few years down the line, I ended up selling for $800,000. Okay, I take that original tax base of what I had plus or whatever increase or whatever expenses I acquired to rehab the place and bring it up to higher value, and now I apply that tax base to the next property. So now let's say I jumped up to the next property that's worth $1 million. I'm still going on the same tax base. So eventually, sooner or later, once I get to that final property and no longer I'm doing 1031 exchanges, I'm eventually going to have to pay taxes. And it's going to probably be a hefty number that's going to be taxed because you're jumping from one thing to the other. But it gave that little guy an opportunity to get to that higher level. All you have to have is a little bit of ambition, a little bit of work ethic, the ability to take a risk. And the 1031 exchange could be a great tool to get you to get to that next place. And they want to take it away. That just doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. and it's going to stunt the growth of real estate investment considerably. I promise you that. A lot of the people that are looking to uh, work on smaller margins and smaller profit margins, it's not going to be worth it to them if they're going to get taxed through their nose. And by the way, the capital gains tax was also something that was um, briefly touched on. They haven't really given an exact number of what they're expecting, but it looks like the Biden Harris side is looking to have that increased as well. And again, the Trump side is not necessarily um, pro increasing those taxes. Overall, across the board, the Republican and Trump side is basically not necessarily pro increasing taxes. They're looking for more additional tax cuts. And going through all the policies that have already been put in place by the 4 years that Trump has been here, well, not exactly 4 years yet, but the 4 years, I could say that there's been one extremely negative thing that hurt a lot of people when it comes to real estate, and that's the SALT tax that we're dealing with. And for anybody that's not familiar with that, is the tax that basically caps off how much deduction you can take from a state and local level towards your IRS tax holdings. So what happened was they put a $10,000 cap, and for many places across the country, that actually didn't affect them that much. It didn't hurt them that much, but it did hurt places like New York dramatically. I think dramatically is actually a really good, like a really nice word to use. It actually devastated a lot of families and devastated a lot of people because it was a benefit that they were able to keep themselves on the fence. Many people that were using that deduction previously no longer had that option. And many people were just making it even, just breaking even week to week. And it really hurt a lot of people. However, I'm going to turn it back to the local level again. And this is why I'm going to break it to the local level. One of the biggest things that was hurting individuals as far as the lack of ability to do deductions were our property taxes, our individual property tax. First of all, we have a super high New York state tax, which is ridiculous, especially when you have to take into consideration that we have other states that are not paying any state tax. You tell me a world where it makes sense that we here in New York have to pay extremely high state taxes and city taxes, by the way, and a lot of other taxes that are basically embedded in our cost of living. And you have a place like Texas, which is also a place full of major metropolises that has no state tax. Does that make any sense to anybody? Because it doesn't make any sense to me. Now, there might be some people out there that like to pay and like take one for the team and work really hard and give all the money they make to the rest of the world and live on a shoestring budget. You like that? You're good with that? To work hard and give all your money away to everybody, and what? You don't want to do that?
I wouldn't mind giving away some, but I want to give it all away. I got a family I got to feed.
What kind of person are you? You should give it all away.
I don't think so.
You don't need to have special things. It's almost like New York right now is penalizing people with a success tax. It's ridiculous. And not only that, they're making us feel now. See, now I'm getting lit up right now, and I'm actually getting more political. I started off with the Trump Biden thing, but at the same time, I can't ignore the local politics that we're dealing with. There's no sense of the absurdity and the amount that we're paying and the justification for everything that's being taken for us and the lack of items that are being given back to us. And I'm not even talking about just this COVID times that we're living in, because you definitely are dealing with a different norm, a different situation altogether when it comes to uh, how we need to work with the current climate. But even before this, we were always paying through the nose here. The only reason a lot of people tolerate it and live with it was, one, because there's only one New York, and they were able to actually take advantage of all the great things that the city has to offer. And the other thing is, this city does give you the opportunity to be able to make more than other places. Now, that means nothing to me if I'm making more here and you're taking more from me, and my quality of life is not as good as it would be in other places. That's basically what we're dealing with over here. So you have, like, I don't know if anybody has taken notice of the political warfare that's happening right now between local and Fed, but everybody's passing the buck. It's everybody else's fault. Even locally, you had situations where Cuomo attacked his own mayor in New York City. And usually they're all on the same page because they're all in the same party. So there's a lot of political actions that are being taken place, and the strategic type of scenarios that we need to take wind of. So let's go back to what this whole SALT situation caused. It caused everybody a reason to take a good look at their taxes and say, why am I paying so much in taxes? For that average person living in Nassau County and is paying 12 to 13 to 14 to $15,000 in taxes for not such a big house. Sometimes you're living in a little ranch with a 60 by 100 lot. Yeah, does that sound huge to you? It's not. Yes, if you're living in Queens in a row house where you're 18 by 40 feet, yeah, that sounds big to you. But at the same time, even there, they're paying high tax for what they're getting. The tax rates have been escalating considerably in Queens, in Brooklyn, in New York City, and there's no justification for that. And now you can't even take a deduction from it. That's a painful thing. And that's the one thing I will say that was part of that initial 2017 tax reform plan that was very, very painful. And I have a feeling that it will be addressed down the line. And I think we have to look locally first of how it needs to be adjusted, because the answer of just pay more is not an answer for me. I don't know if it is for you. If you like I said, paying more, if you're a masochist and you enjoy working really hard and not necessarily benefiting from it the way you should be, then you know how to vote. Then it's just one of those insane things. It's a little bit tough to talk about without getting animated. Now, that being said, another thing that has been a topic that is from the Trump regime that is still in test mode, let's call it, is the opportunity zones that he created. Now, there are a lot of benefits from that, and I could see that being as a platform and a jumping point to rehabilitate areas that were neglected in the past. It's still early and too early in the stages of being able to see how much of a long-term effect any of those places that are redeveloped or repurposed will help the communities, but I can't see it as a bad thing. I'd rather see opportunity zones pop up more and more in more areas and give opportunities to private individuals a chance to create more affordable housing and create more opportunities, and not only could create affordable housing, but create better housing based on the tax incentives are applied from the opportunity zone. I'm not going to get into the opportunity zones right now because there's clearly not enough time on this show, and that could be a topic in 2-3 hours all by itself. And I have talked about this in the past, and I will revisit it. I'm sure once we get more of these zones pop up, I will bring it up again, and we'll have a better conversation about that. But I think that's the way to go. Incentives to private investors, private landlords, private developers, in order to create good, nice housing that will give a lot of individuals the opportunity to be into a place where they never would have been able to before. Now, on the opposite spectrum of that, I'm going to just get into the housing plans for Joe Biden. And the housing plans that he has in place right now are actually, this is actually pretty interesting. Just make sure that I give you accurate numbers, because I don't want to give you false numbers. All the stuff that I'm saying, by the way, is not stuff that I'm just pulling out of the air or from the top of my head. It's stuff that I've taken, and it's been very difficult to be able to find a lot of concrete stuff that has been written. And I'm trying to get this from the best possible sources. I've gotten it from Bloomberg News. I've gotten it from Wall Street Journal. And even then, you have to basically be careful of how accurate or inaccurate a lot of this information is. But these are the best type of sources I was able to find. Times, New York Times, in order to give us the best opportunity to be able to see some stuff over here on where everybody stands, because they are not being very open and exact as far as what their policies are going to be. And that's a little bit vague. So one of the things that I did come across is that they're looking to spend an enormous amount towards the new Green Deal. And it is so confusing as far as where this new Green Deal is going to bring us, because I'm just going to bring it from the structural and the real estate point of view. When you put major restrictions on developers and builders to build buildings that are going to cost possibly 3 to 4 times, if not more than that, than what the normal conventional type of methods of building today are, more than likely they're not going to build. More than likely, you're going to have a situation where we're going to do rehab on pre-existing places. And if they force them to retrofit them, they're not going to touch those either. Or the bill is going to be passed down to the tenants. And now you're creating another situation where you have even more expensive housing. Now, that might not apply here in New York because of the heavy imbalance we have in as far as rental laws. And I'm not going to get lit up about that. I'm not going to get started about that again. I'll save that topic for another day. But it's going to be paid by from somewhere. So if the developers and the builders are paying all that, it's not going to happen, or it's going to happen on a very limited type of situation. And if it does happen, somebody's going to pay the extra toll and the extra cost, and that is going to be the tenants. Now, the argument is that the landlords, the developers, the investors will eventually recoup their money and actually be more profitable because they won't be spending as much in energy. And that might be the case. But how many years is it going to take for them to recoup that difference? And will they actually be alive the day that they find that breaking even point? Because from some of the costs that I've seen and the differences in materials and the differences in the way to build is you're talking about serious money. And more than likely, you're going to see a lot of people never see never see it. So you're basically asking people to actually spend and take a loss to appease you. That doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make any sense to me. There has to be some kind of balance. Getting rid of all oil and all coal and all gas, energy in 10 years is not realistic. It really isn't. You're going to put so many places out of business. And this is not, we're not going to get into the economic factors on a whole because it will have tremendous differences. But here's the issue. How many buildings in New York City do you have that are running off of heat, oil heat, gas heat? What are you going to do with all those buildings? They need it. You're going to ask every single one of these landlords out there to change their boiler system, change their energy system, and turn it all electric? And that's going to happen all in 10 years? I don't think so. Is that even possible? Or how about each individual homeowner? We have so many homes, individual single-family homes that are out there that people are living in. It doesn't even have to be a landlord. It could be somebody living in their own home. And they might not be able to afford to change that system. Who's going to pay the bill? Oh, the government's going to send the money? Somebody's going to eventually pay the bill. Government gets their bill from the people, their money from the people. No ifs, ands, or buts. Sooner or later, you're going to pay for it. I'm going to pay for it. Trevor's going to pay for it. Everybody's going to pay for it. So there has to be a middle ground. There has to be an easing into that. I don't think anybody out there is against having a cleaner planet. I don't think anybody is out there looking to destroy our environment and have polluted water and polluted skies and have all the animals die. I don't think anybody is that evil that wants that. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe there are some evil people like that out there. That's all about greed and about hunger. I think more people than less are actually decent. Maybe they're misguided a lot of times, but they're decent. I think there's decent people out there. And there has to be a correct plan to be able to approach this in a way where we are looking at our current usage of various energies and start incorporating the other ones in a positive and effective way without hurting the other part of the equation. You also have a ton of people that are employed right now that are working for the energy sector. And no matter what anybody says, there's no proven fact of all the people that are working in the energy sector as it is today will immediately get jobs in the new energy sector, like wind and solar and hydro. We don't know that. And there's going to be some type of layoff type of situation where, these people have to be, they have to be taught in a different way. They have to be basically given the opportunity to be retrained. Who's going to pay for all this retraining? You take a look at the car industry, and the car industry is actually doing it the way I believe is the right way to do it. You're seeing all the electronic vehicles, all the hybrid vehicles starting to be incorporated, not only by companies that are only electric based like Tesla that are out there, but there's a lot of other ones that are all electric based. But you're also seeing the conventional type of automotive like Ford, like GM, like Nissan, like all the other companies out there that are slowly starting to implement electric and hybrid type of vehicles. And that's the way to do it. You slowly start to put everything together that way. You slowly start to make everybody work in a more efficient way and keep jobs going and keep the economy going. It's just how it is. Am I that crazy? Am I the only one out there that believes this way? I hope I'm not, because if I am, we're in trouble. There's always got to be a middle ground. It can't be two extremes. You can't be complete right and you can't be complete left. We have to look at what we're dealing with today. Now, you tell me, Nick, how does this affect real estate? Well, I'll tell you how it affects real estate. If there's people out of work and they can't afford their mortgage payments and they can't afford to buy a house, it affects real estate in a big way. It affects them in a super big way. If you got tenants that no longer have jobs and they can't pay, who's going to pay them? Are they going to go on Section 8? Are they going to go on vouchers? Eventually, that might have to happen. And then what happens now? The government's paying again, which means you are paying, I'm paying, everybody that's a decent taxpayer is paying. So that's how it affects us. We're talking about scenarios that are very realistic. Now, I didn't say who I'm going to vote for. I think it's pretty clear as far as my thoughts and who I believe will be more proactive towards real estate. And I'm going to hold my own opinion to myself. But I do urge everybody out there that is listening to me that maybe a couple of the points that I hit during this stream hit you in a way where you didn't think about things in a different angle and understood it in a different way, and it actually hit home and you understood it, where you made your decision as far as who you're going to be voting for. Now, most of the people that are listening to me right now have already made the decision, not today, not yesterday, months ago. They knew who they wanted to vote for. I'm not going to vote for Trump because he's got an orange face and I don't like his the way he talks. That's your opinion? Let it be your opinion. I don't like Joe Biden because Joe Biden is old and he doesn't know what he's talking about. He stutters and etc. etc. That's your opinion? Make that your opinion. And that's what, and no matter what I tell you, no matter what somebody else tells you, whatever the CNNs, whatever the Fox News say, it's not going to change your opinion because that's been cemented in your mind. That's the way it is. I don't like him, and I don't care what the policy is, if it affects me or not. And that goes on both sides. It goes really extreme on both sides, and that's unfortunate. I hope that people start thinking more rationally and actually to think a little bit more realistically as far as getting past I don't like this guy and getting into I like myself, I like my family, I like my country, I love everything around me, and I want it to be better for years to come. So every vote that goes out there and every decision that everybody makes is going to impact us for years to come. This is by far, and it's not, excuse me, it's not coronavirus. I'm a smoker. So, by far, this is the most influential election that we're ever going to go through. And on that, I have to get off because Trevor's going to kick me off. So go out and vote. And hopefully next week we're having a conversation about who won, if we actually find out by then who won. And I will be back again next week. I will be doing another follow-up live stream, though, sometime down the road in order to finish my thoughts. Have a good night. Have a great week. Make lots of money in real estate. Go vote. Stay safe. I just lost track of what time it was.